Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation today. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about a little bit of politics with Mr. Politics. We're going to talk about the issue with Steve Bannon, one of former President Trump's close advisors, how he surrendered for his involvement in the Build the Wall fundraising effort, crowdfunding effort, and how people have said he is responsible for fraud. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, we're going to check in with Mr. Politics about the Baltimore water crisis that's continuing to happen as they are finding traces of E. coli in the water system in Baltimore. So I certainly want to bring you up to speed on that situation. Can we talk about Memphis? Is the conversation about the Memphis shooting where 4 people were killed by a 19-year-old black man, will that conversation include a talk about mental health? I want to have that one-on-one with you about whether this conversation should be sent differently than other conversations. And then later, can we talk about the white privilege card that is being passed out to high school students around the country, and it's being sold by Amazon? Yeah, folks, the white privilege card. Plus, we got to bring you some trends, posts, and updates about big names that have transitioned on this day and so much more. So stay with us. A lot coming at you on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversations. Big shout out to my online culture crew. So many of you are checking in, and I'm loving the new voices and new faces, and people just reaching out to me. So thank you for your continued support. Speaking of support, make sure y'all support us here at Black Star Network. We're doing big things. Yesterday, we announced that the Black Star was going to has now gotten the media rights to HBCU college games, along with our partner Urban Star Network. So there's a lot that's happening. And so that's why we are always asking for your continued support. So many of you have already given, but for those who haven't, you can check out our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Again, that website address is blackstarnetwork.com. Support us through all of those platforms, and most importantly, continue to do the great work of supporting Black media that tells our story and pleads our case like no one else. So thank you for the support as of right now. Folks, let's jump in right into it as we are having a number of big conversations that we want to have with our Thursday guest, Mr. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who serves as the owner and founder of DMV Daily Media Group. He's always bringing us up to speed on a number of issues. And the big one that we wanted to kick off the discussions with is about this ongoing Baltimore water crisis. So let me welcome my brother into the space here. Mr. Politics, how are you, dear bro?
I'm just right. How you doing, Brother Farajii?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I see you got that Ravens. I know we round the corner from that one. So
Sunday, baby. We take on our old quarterback, Joe Flacco in New York on 9/11.
Right, there it is. September 11th. It's happening. It's happening. But first and foremost, on a more serious note, in Baltimore, there's a lot of talk nationally, and I'm sure you've seen this and you know what the discussion has been about with this water crisis. We talked about Jackson, but Baltimore is having its own water crisis that is slowly getting some attention, but it has not fully gotten the same amount of attention as we've seen in Jackson, where now there is a water advisory because traces of E. coli is being found into the system, the water system in the city. Let me share with you a little bit of what the mayor of Baltimore, Mayor Brandon Scott, had to say this. Check this out, folks. Yeah, Baltimore city officials, and Keenan, let's throw this one up on the board there, where Baltimore city officials have continued searching for the source of an E. coli contamination of tap water today. After a boil water advisory was lifted for a portion of the city, 3 sites tested positive for contamination over Labor Day weekend, but follow-up testing showed only one positive site remained. According to the mayor, he said, "This isn't something that can be resolved overnight. We are continuing to test locations throughout the city and the surrounding county, and will continue to do so until the issue is resolved." The boil water advisory remains in effect for parts of West Baltimore from North and South Rigg Avenue to West Franklin Street and East and West Carey Street to Pulaski Avenue, officials said. The advisory south and southwest of Route 40, including a precautionary area in Baltimore County, has been lifted. What's going on now, Hassan? Is this a public health crisis, or is this now turned into a political crisis?
I think it's a little of both, Farajii. I think, part of the problem that exists is, when I first saw it, I'm thinking, we just talked about last week, Jackson, Mississippi. And you think about, most people think about Flint, Michigan, and what's been going on across this country. But this is far different from Jackson, Mississippi, and the problems and the erosions. And I think part of what exists is two things. And we talked about this last week about the erosions of these water pipes in the system that are underground. So it's very hard. It's not like you can just go change a pipe like you do under your sink and get it done with and put in new pipes. These are underground, so they're very costly. And in many jurisdictions like Baltimore and in Jackson, urban cities that have long been not very cash poor, but very cash poor in many aspects, it's hard to just fix this overnight, right? In Baltimore, in case in point, we've been raising the water bill on residents since Stephanie Rawlins Blake was our mayor back in 2012. Every 3 years, there's been an increase in the water bill in order to put money together to fix this problem. What they found was, in what they're saying in regular testing, that they found this bacteria in a part of Baltimore, which is West Baltimore, right? The Sandtown area, the areas that most people were watching across the country saw burning during the Freddie Gray riots. This is the area we're talking about in Baltimore City, and to some extent, a little bit of Baltimore County. The problem, though, Farajii, why it's become political is many facets. One is, and it probably all falls on Mayor Brandon Scott and this administration, who I call just can't get right? Because they really can't. Everything they touch turns to shit. And the problem that exists is most people, reports have come out that they knew about this back this past weekend, holiday weekend, during Labor Day weekend. And instead of addressing the residents at that point, they chose to ignore it for a few days. And by the time they released the information, they released it to the public via Twitter. Nobody was paying that. They didn't do it through their automated text messaging and telemarketing system that they have in place to warn residents across the city of Baltimore of either crises or natural disasters. They choose to use Twitter. And so they ignored their city council representatives, who could have then in turn warned their residents about this crisis. Again, they went to a social media network that the mayor frequents quite heavily, and then wondered why people were like, "What are you doing?" And so it took a time for people to actually realize that you're bathing your children in bacteria laced water, and that you need to stop and you need to boil this water because you're not supposed to be drinking it. And so a lot of people just don't trust that this administration is getting it right. Now, from what they're saying is that we're towards the end part of this, that a lot of the advisory, the boil water advisory that they put out, has been lifted in most of the jurisdictions that have been affected. But even when they rolled out, because many people didn't know, because it was an isolated, what they were calling an isolated incident, nobody knew exactly who was affected. And when they had this supposed to have been an interactive map online that you can see if your residence was affected by this E. coli bacteria, it was for many hours, if not for a good part of at least a day, unworkable. Most people could not get it to work. So you couldn't even determine whether you were actually being affected by this, which caused more people to have to then either go out and buy water or have to continuously boil their own water. And then again, there was no system in place to be able to get water to residents, especially now with so many people struggling financially, get them the outside bottles of water and everything else. It took for outside agencies individuals running for office or elected to office already to work with other outside agencies to bring these resources into the community that the mayor's office should have had on tap and it should have been doing from day one.
Wow. Wow. So I'm wondering, Hassan, is there what's the talk around replacing some of the pipes? I know that there was yeah, and you mentioned Stephanie Rawlings Blake. I remember back then there was some discussion about replacing the pipes when the Freddie Gray situation kicked off, right? That as the reason Freddie Gray, and for those who may not know, the reason that the story of Freddie Gray being killed while in police custody, he was sitting in the back of his van and essentially was beat up and had got his neck broken. He really while in police custody. But the thing about it was that prior to his encounters or interactions with police, he was exposed to lead, and as a child, and his family was able to win the lawsuit to, as we call it, lead money. He got lead money, and of course that affects how your brain grows. That affects development, skills, and all of those things. So there was talk about the water then. Has there been anything new? Has there been any new plan? I know the governor has talked, and I'm speaking of the current Governor Hogan. There has been something, but I'm not sure. Is there anything concrete that you've been hearing?
Not really. I mean, I do have to give credit where credit's due. The administration, starting with the Rawlings Blake administration, into the very brief administration of Catherine Pugh, Jack Young probably worked on it more as mayor, and I'm sure the Scott administration is working on it now in terms of putting together a master plan on fixing the complexity of these pipes. It's not like you can just dig under one street, get to these pipes and fix it. It's an entire city system, right? And so you can imagine the magnitude of fixing such a long running systemic problem that we have in the city and how costly it is. And that's why, regardless, we talk about taxes, and I can't stand them myself, but at some point you have to pay added fees and or taxes in order to pay for things like this. And so, while it was responsible for Stephanie Rawlings Blake to start this, many people disliked her because of it. I think part of the reason she did not run for re-election is because of this and some of the other taxes and fees she brought forth. And of course, she was the mayor during the Freddie Gray riots. It just seemed to be aloof at best. But this administration has been trying to address it. Like you said, lead in the pipes has been around since before we were even born, you and I.
Right.
Farajii.
Come on, bro.
Right. This is a systemic issue in the city. They've had to shut down the water systems in schools. Schools in Baltimore City no longer have water systems connected to the Baltimore City water, right? So you can't drink out of the water. They can't even drink
the water.
Absolutely not. They actually are paying for bottled water systems.
Right.
For kids to be, which is a good thing. But guess what? They're still washing their hands and faces and things of that sort with that water in the bathrooms. But again, how long? That's a patchwork, and that's been going on for at least over 5 or 6 years now. So they still haven't even addressed that because they haven't even gotten these HE schools up to par in regards to the water system, which of course was filled with lead. The problem with these E. coli bacteria is nobody seems to know how to test for it. Nobody really believes when this administration, when they say, oh, everything is everything and you're fine and you can drink the water. Most people who weren't even in an affected zone in West Baltimore, even over here in East Baltimore, would say, I'm not drinking that water. I'm going to drink bottled water, because they don't believe that just because you're saying that we're not affected, that we're not. And so, and there's no way for them to show the citizenry that they're not being affected by it. So now you have mass hysteria when we've seen Flint, we see what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi. We don't know and believe in this administration and what they're telling us. And now their answer is, oh, don't worry, we're going to give you 25% off your next water bill. Like that is supposed to quell the fears of the Baltimore City residents, is a 25% reduction in their next bill. People don't want to hear that. They want to see leadership. And unfortunately, when this was breaking and the news was coming out, the mayor's rather be at a Baltimore Orioles baseball game, which I just happened to be there as well, instead of actually leading the city and being, on the front lines of trying to address the fears that were coming from. So, at the end of the day, Farajii, it's a hot mess. Governor Hogan has kind of stepped in with words more so than action to say the state will provide this many resources to help you. But mind you, this governor and this mayor have never been best of friends. In fact, they've been
Nope.
back and forth bickering for the past 2 years since the mayor's been in office. So how much that actually helps is still remains to be seen.
Absolutely. Let me get some comments from our online culture crew, folks. Continue to post your thoughts as we're talking about the Baltimore boil water advisory that's been lifted. That wasn't affected, had just been lifted, but there's a real issue of E. coli in the Baltimore water system. All right, Janae, you checked in and said, "Happy Friday Eve." Look, who reads IG Twitter when serious matters happen? I don't want to see the Queen's death or water issues in a tweet or IG. Come on now.
Right.
Hey, Hassan, you and I are students of communication. In this day and time, I can kind of see why some administrations would rely on that, because even when administrations stand before, mayors, city council people, or elected officials stand before a podium and do a press conference, most people tune out unless it's a major emergency, right? But how do you find a balance in that when you know that you're getting greater engagement on social media, especially if you're hosting a press conference at noon when people are either still at work, at school, and they're not paying as much attention? How do you engage to get that word out?
Well, see, you're talking about engagement. Engagement is great, right? And that is the method for social media and digital media is engagement, education. But in terms of warning of a crisis of this magnitude, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to tell people, hey, hold on, don't drink the water. There's a problem in place. The first place you go to is media outlets. That was not done. Second place you want to go to is the people who represent them, who have systems in place that can get it out, meaning their city council representative. That wasn't done. Matter of fact,
oh, wow.
council people were on media today complaining about the lack of information that they've been receiving from this the Scott administration since they've been in office. The third thing you want to do is Baltimore City has for at least a decade, if not more, a 311 type of telemarketing mass email messaging system in place that they can email and call the citizens through their system to warn them of this. That never happened. So there are other ways of warning. I agree. Twitter is a good way of getting information out as it's coming along, right? Okay. If in case you missed our addresses on all the major net television and radio networks, in case you missed the message from your city council representatives, in case you missed the calls and the text message we sent you, here is added information about what's going on. I think Twitter is a good use moving forward to show people as they're going along how the process is playing out, what they should be watching out for. But in terms of a mass warning to warn people, no, that is not roll it out. I'm sorry. It just isn't.
I hear you. That's a great point. Great point. Mike V, you checked in. Good to hear from you, Mike. You said we have the same issue in Boston as Baltimore. To replace all the pipes in the ground takes 30 years and at close to $1 billion. Project won't be complete until 2032. That is the long term, obviously. That's the long-term plan to replace all these pipes, which is why, Mike, I brought it up that there's been talk about it. But at least what about some sort of alternative? And I know that there are a number of water advocates in Baltimore City. I've worked with some and I'm familiar with others. But at least some alternative to piping, right? Like, okay, you don't have to rip up the ground and come up with this massive 10-year, 20-year strategy. But there's got to be some alternatives, you know what I mean, that maybe other cities have used that Baltimore could possibly use. Is that even an option on the table, Hassan?
Yeah, part of it is. I mean, to Mike's point that, under the Rollins Blake administration, they began this. And you're right. It was, I want to say 2025 and maybe as late as 2028 when this completion of this project is supposed to be complete in terms of fixing the water systems in Baltimore City. But it takes a lot of time, money, energy, and work. You got to put in work. You can't just be a showboat kind of elected representative. And I think that's part of the problem that this administration has been having. That a lot of people feel like, One, they call him this kid, which, Brandon Scott is a good friend of mine. I've known him since he actually has been a kid. He's a grown man now. He's young, but nonetheless, he's still a grown man. It kills me when people call him that. But unfortunately, that's how people view him. As here's this kid who's really just running around as the mascot of the city, going to these press conferences. They don't see the work being done. I know the work is being done, but the problem is when the masses of the public don't see it, you have a huge problem, especially when the majority of his senior administration in 2 years, Farajii, has already left. It's been a mass exodus. Matter of fact, one of his deputy mayors that he brought in from, I want to say, Ohio, has just left and resigned abruptly last week after being suspended for a week due to his inappropriate behavior with women in the workplace and having already through over a half a dozen staffers in a matter of a year and a half. And so you have all of this coupled on top of that. But as you said, Farajii, there are ways of working with alternative measures of water systems. And there are quite a bit of great organizations on the ground, but you need that foundation. That foundation is the water system. There's no way around that. You have to get that done. But while you're doing that, there are ways, and Mayor Jack Young was probably the best in working with this and has passed legislation while he was mayor in order to not only lower water bills processes, but also put in a water quality of life legislation that passed that unfortunately I can't speak to the details of it right now because it was a couple years ago, but it was a very good piece of legislation that worked with these groups that you're talking about in order to have an alternative to the water problems and crises that we see in the city of Baltimore. So they're working towards that.
Yeah. That's a lot. Damon, you checked in. Damon, you an engineer. You said the infrastructure system in the USA have always been way past its design life, bridges, electrical grid, water piping, etc. As an engineer, I am in fear what could really happen in the near future. Yeah, me too, Damon. Brother, I am definitely in fear because all of these natural disasters wears down on the infrastructure. We saw that. Of course, we see that in Jackson and in other places, but nothing like a natural disaster, something that we don't have no control of, nothing that something that we can't put our arms around. We can't determine the beginning nor the ending of, and it's whipping our ass in terms of beating up on the country and its infrastructure. And I would go as far as to say, Hassan, that if one of the greatest weaknesses of the United States of America, it's not the people's resolve, it's not the military, it's the infrastructure. You get under the ground of the United States and you'll see a country that is trembling. The foundation of this country is physically trembling. And just the wrong natural disaster, if it's just a wind that's too strong, you're talking about creating problems.
Well, that was what was so huge about the Biden administration's passage of the infrastructure legislation. See, we always look at it from a, paper and pen, these are words on paper type of thing. And most people who really don't care about things like climate control or care about infrastructure kind of look at it and was like, okay, well, it's no stimulus in it. I ain't getting no money out of it. So really, but that is a huge passage and a lot of money that will go into, hopefully, they'll get it in time to places before they crumble, as you're talking about, but to fix the infrastructure across so many jurisdictions across this country, right? I'm more worried about not the natural disasters, but weapons of mass destruction. Can you imagine if somebody who really wanted to do harm to this country, we talk about a civil war brewing in this country, were able to manipulate and get certain weapons, and I ain't talking about physical guns. I'm talking about biological weaponry. Into the water, into the air, things in mass urban cities like Baltimore and like Jackson, like Detroit and Chicago, or even local communities. Do you know how many casualties we have? Because I really don't think that jurisdictions across this country are prepared for something like that. I really don't. And
we are prepared.
Did that, we're in trouble.
Which very quickly, and before we take our next pause, Hassan, in the 30 seconds or so. So, what's the next step for the city? What do the residents of Baltimore do as this boil water advisory is lifted in some of the city? We still don't have a full handle on the E. coli and how far it can go into the system. So, what's next?
Yeah, I think part of the problem the city's going to have is convincing the residents that drinking the water is safe moving forward, right? And so one, they're going to have to be able to come up with a way to show. People aren't just going to believe that you're saying, okay, it's fine, go ahead and drink the water. Now, you're going to have to show them to some degree on why it's safe. And then moving forward, you're going to have to really, make them understand that here's a problem that we're having in a system that we've been trying to fix for years, if not decades. Work with us, but understand and show people how you came about these findings, because that still has not been clear on how you came about these findings of E. coli, how you're going to be safe moving forward, and how this administration plans to tackle this over the coming 6 months to 6 years.
Right, absolutely. Tiana, I want to get your take in and very quickly. You said this country is being held together with paper clips, duct tape, and Gorilla Glue.
That says it all, right there.
Can I add something to that, Tiana? A hope and prayer too. That's what we're stuck together on a hope and prayer. Just wait and see.
Really good.
All right, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversations with Mr. Politics. Let's give it the latest updates around former Trump aide Steve Bannon, how he has officially surrendered in New York City for the Build the Wall fundraising crowdfunding effort that President Trump kicked off, and how it put Steve Bannon and others in hot water because they're saying, you know what, that was a fraud. We'll have that conversation. And then later on, if the Republicans lose in the midterm, is Trump to blame? I'm going to ask a man, Mr. Politics, who worked with Republicans before, will he be to blame? We'll have that discussion. So stay with us. That's all coming up in the next 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Can you believe the nerve of these Republicans? They only want to block progress for our community. They talk about cutting Medicare and Social Security. They played politics with veterans' health care. They voted against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and funding for our HBCUs, and against lowering prescription drug costs for our seniors. These Republicans keep trying hard to stand in the way, but President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Democrats won't let them. They are delivering for us. The Democratic National Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause to too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome to the show. Former President Donald Trump's aide, Steve Bannon, has pled not guilty in New York today to state charges of money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud relating to an alleged online scheme to raise money for the effort of building a wall on the southern U.S. border. Now, these charges are based on the same conduct that he was charged in a federal prosecution in 2020 that simply said that he and others alleged that they had defrauded donors in that border wall scheme and situation. And so now the white supremacist Steve Bannon says he's not guilty. Well, folks, he has relied on the power and the influence of President Trump, who had once pardoned him, but presidential pardons do not apply in state investigations. So we will see. Now, he came into court handcuffed. He was flanked by officers, according to the reports. But it is going to be interesting to see, folks, how the Trump camp and Republicans are going to respond to this onslaught of misappropriation and mishandling of people's funds. I want to bring back our political analyst, Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, for this part of the conversation as well. Hassan, this is your man, right? Steve Bannon?
Yeah, right. That's your home.
No, I'm just joking, folks. I'm just joking. Hassan is not. No. But this is up Hassan's alley. He loves talking about the cronies of Trump. But what do you make of this, Hassan? Because this is a situation where he surrendered today. He pled not guilty, but he issued a statement on late Tuesday, in part calling the indictment phony charges. And of course, he's going to politicize it. And nothing more than a partisan political weaponization of the criminal justice system. Come on, Steve.
Well, first, before I get into that, because I know I'm going to forget, but before we do, long live the Queen. Queen Elizabeth II died today, of course, at age 96.
Absolutely.
The world
passed away, 96 years old, man. Longest monarch, matriarch that served.
Absolutely. And 70 years of leadership. She came in when she was 25 years old. I mean, wow. You know, Britain, of course, just got a new prime minister.
Hey, man, look, all I know is that's going to be a BBC special.
Yes. Oh, for the next 2-3 months, if not 2-3 years, I'm telling you.
And she I don't know what her approval ratings were, recently, but I presume they were pretty high.
Yes, very high. I think the last time I checked, they were at like 78% and 82%. Like, she has always been. And not only just in Britain, but across the world, right?
Whoa!
Very, very classy individual. It's going to be interesting to see how Britain moves forward. That. But back to our story. Steve Bannon and Donald Trump are the gifts that keep on giving, right? Like, you cannot script a better Apprentice show or television show as you can with these two, right? They're just, hilarious, if not for the fact that they rip these people off for $15+ million, right? What they're reporting is $15 million. I've heard that it was north of $20 to $25 million, which was the real total that was given. Because we're talking about one online system of fundraising. They had started this with multiple online. Of course, Donald Trump came in with this, build the wall. But build the wall was a conservative mantra before Donald Trump became president. This was always something from a right-wing playbook. He just kind of capitalized off of it. And Steve Bannon saw the financial opportunity in it. And so he got a couple of his little minions to put this online fundraising tool together to bring in this type of money. Now, mind you, on the website, it specifically said that all of the proceeds, not portions, but all of it would go to build the wall. And that's where they're running into problems. Had they put on their online fundraising mechanism that portions of it would go to building the wall or whatever, then I don't think that we would have seen the level of charges that we saw either from the federal side or the state side. The reason why the state is coming in is because basically President Trump circumvented the law. He thought that as president, he can do what he wants. And so by giving a pardon to Steve Bannon during a trial, which basically took him out of federal purview in terms of getting convicted, then that allowed for the state to come after. Now, mind you, had they have convicted Steve Bannon in federal court or even found him not guilty, the state would not have been able to bring these charges. But because President Trump pardoned him during trial, right, before he left office, that allowed the state to bring these charges. And again, like you said, pardons from the federal side does not relate to state charges. So it kind of is a catch-22. And he can huff and puff and try to blow the fake wall down all he wants. But at the end of the day, he's getting convicted. Don't get that twisted.
So I mean, I'm always it's always interesting to see how, the narratives around the people around Trump, how that continues to happen. I mean, you got a lot of key players around Trump. Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, his longtime advisors. I mean, his fixer. These people are going through these things, and it's like, even William Barr. I mean, like Steve Bannon said when he was walking through the court, he said, "This is what happens in the last days of a dying regime. They will never shut me up. They'll have to kill me first. I have not yet begun to fight."
Right.
I mean, he still has access to, he does his show. I think he has like a podcast or radio show. He still has a number of people that tune into him, that listen to him about, shaping their political views on things. Like, how do you shut a man like this up?
Unfortunately, in today's world, Farajii, with the digital media divide and social media, which has given everybody a platform now, right? You go on, so you go online and Facebook, whatever, and everybody's somebody, right? They make up these fake profiles, and unfortunately, you have millions of people who think like and act like Donald Trump and Steve Bannon who buy into this. And I want to say almost like you get what you get, right? Like that's what your ass deserves when you following somebody like this and believing in them, 100% and realizing they're ripping your ass off, right? It's the same way I felt when I heard fool talking about I can't stand Obamacare, but don't touch my Affordable Care Act. Like, are you that stupid that you don't realize that they're one and the same? But they really are. They really just don't understand. They're following these people lockstep. I mean, you can literally tell them that Donald Trump came from the moon and that God sent him from, and they will be talking about this for weeks to come. And, they don't do any fact checking, apparently. They just, believe everything that's being given to them. So in many aspects, I don't feel sorry for the victims of this crime because you fell for it, but again, you have to be held accountable in this country. And, Donald Trump felt while he was in office that he can get away with it, that he and his cronies were above the law. And to some degree they were, and he's gotten away with it while he was in office. Now he doesn't wield that type of power. But he's still getting away with, that's why I used to always tell people, don't focus on what they're showing you. Focus on what they ain't, right? The judicial appointments are one of the most powerful tools that a president has while in office, and that a party has when controlling the U.S. Senate, when confirmation of these judges across the country, not just the Supreme Court, but across the country. And it's showing itself to be prudent when you saw the recent decision by the judge in Florida who gave this special master approval. This was somebody appointed by Donald Trump.
Appointed by Trump, bro.
41 years old, who really shouldn't have been serving in that capacity. Now, mind you, from all intents and from all accounts, she's very bright. I'm not taking that away from her, that she knows the law, but she probably would not have gotten this appointment had she had not been loyal to that brand of politics. And now you see what's coming. Like every legal scholar I've talked to said that her ruling was absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, now that has to go through the court system. But that's based off of them appointing judges that they know will rule in their favor. Donald Trump has been doing this in terms of his businesses in New York for decades. So he knows how to use the court system to his advantage. And he taken that, the political power of being president, to a whole new level. So I'm telling you right now, pay attention to that. Don't just look at the obvious parts of it. Look at some of the powers that we don't talk about or they don't really discuss that are really impactful in in decades to come.
That's a great point. Great point. A couple of folks checked in. LaShonda, you checked in and said, look, I want to go see pictures of him in handcuffs. They would definitely have pictures of the black and brown like that. Yeah, but I'm not confident. I'm not confident that it's going to make a difference. Lana, you checked in. You said the same thing that I'm feeling, Lana. You said, I don't think anything is going to happen to him. All this is a waste of time. It's just a lot of show. It's a political theater. You know what I mean? Like you might say, oh man, we're going to finally get one of them. And the sad part about it, bro, you just pointed out, I mean, we talked about this with some other guests yesterday in the last couple of days. The situation is so bad that you got people in these positions of power, judges, prosecutors, state's attorneys, and all of these positions of power. And they get in the courtroom and they might as well be like, and you are guilty. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They should just let them show their true colors. And it's like we are wasting taxpayers' time. You know what I mean? You want to see accountability, you want to see consequences, but not at the risk of wasting people's money and time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not about what you know in the world, who you know, right? And we've seen that. I'm looking at Lana's thing. I thought it said Sinead Latham. I'm about to say, dang, Sinead, why? Give her put my number across the screen, Farajii. But look, no, seriously. In all honesty, Steve Bannon probably won't get anywhere near the level of time, if any, that Marilyn Mosby will get. Right? We should know in this country the justice system is a just us and a justice system. There are two different systems of levels of government, and the playing field is far different from those who look like Steve Bannon compared to those who look like Marilyn Mosby. Right? But there are also two different levels of crimes, and so I think part of the crime that Steve Bannon and even to some degree Donald Trump and his accolades you're seeing is a Democratic ploy and really a political ploy to look and try to kind of pump up the Democratic Party ahead of the midterm elections. That part of that is true. He said this when they charged him back when he ripped them off the yacht that he was cruising on back before the 2020 elections for the federal charges for this. That came in August, right before the 2020 midterms as well, right? So we're talking about politics being played in a lot of this as well. But don't get it twisted. When charges like this are being filed in the federal court system and the state court systems, don't think that these judges and these prosecutors aren't actually doing their job. That these prosecutors want a conviction. Whether they're going to get it is a whole nother, circumstance, whether that's going to actually happen. Right. But again, you got to make a charge, and they brought the charges. They've been investigating him and Donald Trump, the Trump organization, who's been charged as well in other crimes, not convicted to this, not related to this. But you're going to start seeing these charges, and not all of it is politics. Now the question is, will they have enough? Because when you don't have witnesses that help out, a lot of their people who are around this won't actually take the stand against these individuals, then it's really hard to bring forth the conviction. So,
Yeah,
we got to wait and see.
absolutely. As we wrap up our conversations with you, Hassan, I'm wondering, I read a new op-ed by Mr. Ross Baker, who's an opinion columnist for USA Today. He put it out there: if Republicans don't regain the Senate, there's one person to blame, Donald Trump. He said, in normal times, there's a procedure for vetting GOP candidates for the Senate. Its purpose is to identify promising candidates and provide them with the resources to run a successful campaign. However, in these unnormal or these crazier times, we're seeing a different slew of candidates. We're seeing a much more uncontrolled influence of Trump. Do you agree with this assertion that if the Republicans lose, and they're saying Mitch McConnell and others are like, that we may not be able to grab the Congress as much as we thought a couple of months ago? If the Republicans lose, that it's Donald Trump, or is it because of other issues?
No, it's absolutely not. Look, Donald Trump is to blame for the craziness we see today across this country in the Republican Party as the catalyst to these right-wing nuts being able to show who they really are and be okay with it because their president is as nutty as they are. So the racism and the, make America great again and that whole dog whistle, that he's the catalyst for that, and he is to blame for that. But the voters are the ones who are to blame for the extremism that we see in candidates in the GOP across the country that win in these primaries. Donald Trump wasn't the Donald Trump that we know today in 2008 and 2010, when right-wing individuals like Christine O'Donnell in Delaware won, ended up losing to Joe Biden, but they won in Nevada, and we saw these Tea Party activists pop up, these right-wing extremists. You forget that, the right-wing sweep of the House in 2010. People like Dan Cox in Maryland, John Gibbs in Michigan, Herschel Walker in Georgia, and Doug Mastriani in Pennsylvania are a part of a process known as the gerrymandered districts across this country that have packed in these right-wing Republicans in these districts and these left-wing leftists in these districts. And that's why you get this, because you have a party system in place that allows for their party extremists to come out and put these people in and elect them during primaries. The problem with that process is those individuals now have to go to the general electorate, right? A more moderate, independent, and sometimes left-leaning electorate, and now make that case in November. And so when you talk about these statewide positions, no, they're not going to have a chance in hell of winning positions to come November 8th. But in more congressional districts, especially, right wing, right? Yeah, absolutely. And so I think they're going to easily take back the House. But the Senate is a different story, because when you're running in the Senate, you're running statewide. And so you're not running in a district that is filled with like-minded individuals coming out to vote. There's people that you have, and that's why we talked about this with the Alaska election, right? We saw Sarah Palin fail because of the system of voting that they had. Right? That system of voting, ranked choice voting, allowed for a more fair process, that you can't just be a candidate that goes to the extreme left or the extreme right, because you need those second and third choice votes down the line. So you have to appeal to other constituency bases that may not think and act like you do. And that is really what the government is. And what it's all about.
Yeah. Final point, Hassan, on a whole different note. Lamar Jackson.
MVP. MVP this year.
MVP this year.
Contract.
No, wait, hold on, bro. Yo, hold on. Look, I've been keeping up with the talks, right? And I'm like, yo, he's saying that he wants a guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson. The Ravens saying, hold up, let's talk about it. They haven't made an agreement yet. And folks around the country, around the league, sports analysts in and outside of the league saying, look, you not having an agent is why this situation may not be going the way you want it. Even though he put the self-imposed Friday deadline, which is tomorrow, he put this deadline out there. I'm reading Joe Buck. He just said he thinks it's a mistake that he said, I think when you get involved as a player, whether it's baseball, football, hockey, NBA, whatever it is, and you're the one hearing your downfalls, and you're the one hearing the criticism from the team, whether they're hanging it over your head, he said that's why you have to have an agent in the room.
Absolutely.
Because he believes that he put it out there. He said he believes that this deal would have been done if there was an agent in the room. What's your take? What do you think, Lamar? You think how this thing gonna play out, bro?
It would have been done. It would have been done last year sometime. But Lamar decided, remember at first his mother was the agent, right? And then that kind of stepped back, and now he has become the go-to agent for himself. And mind you, look, I understand you don't want to pay this agent this type of money, but there's a flip side to that. As Joe Buck just said, you now have to sit in these negotiation tables and hear the negative side of the, right? Because not everything in your mind is, oh, I'm this great player and I got these stats. Okay, well, let's talk about that. You also missed time the end of the year last year due to injury that cost us in a postseason, right?
Right.
You don't want to talk about that. If he was serious about wanting this contract, he would not play this Sunday. Matter of fact, he wouldn't play until a contract gets done. Because if, from a negotiation standpoint, why in the world would I go out and play on Sunday on a $25 million contract, not knowing what my future is? Because if I get hurt, now I have no leverage for the team, right? How am I going to go to you hurt and say, well, I want a maxed out contract? They're like, man, please, man, go sit down. You know what I mean? And an agent would have told him that. Look, if you don't like the contract that they're offering you, fine, but don't play. Sit down on the bench, take the booze, do whatever you got to do. We'll get this done. And once the Ravens go through 2 or 3 games and realize they can't win without him, trust me, that maxed out Deshaun Watson deal, you'll get millions more than that because they're going to know they need you. But on the flip side of that, if they win the next 11 games without you, then you might be going to Cleveland yourself or somewhere else to play here, right? I mean, I think the Ravens understand that Lamar Jackson is the Baltimore Ravens at this point. He is the cornerstone of our team.
I love watching.
But they're not stupid enough to want to shell out a guaranteed contract for a mobile quarterback that we've seen through the years. It's not something that's sustainable long term. Smart business. And Lamar has to understand that and be able to deal with that moving forward. Otherwise, he'll be playing under the franchise tag next year. But trust and believe, Baltimore ain't getting rid of him. I can tell you that right now.
How much you think he based on the current market, what Russell Wilson was paid, Deshaun was paid. Deshaun's, and I think we can say Deshaun's contract was like an outlier in that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just, even what Tom Brady is paid and all of these other, how much would you say reasonably is a good number for a talent like Lamar Jackson?
Deshaun Watson's contract messed up the entire.
Messed it up. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Messed it all up. Cleveland should have. Come on now.
Messed it up.
Yeah, that sets the market standard. And the problem is Deshaun's not even worth that amount.
Hell no.
They were thinking about.
Hell no. And I ain't even look, this is I'm talking about talent. I'm talking about his on the field. I'm not even talking about this other stuff. I'm just talking about what he does when he's on the field. No,
not at all. Not at all. I would Lamar deserves more than Josh Allen, in my opinion.
Right.
He really deserves more than Deshaun Watson, but I would not give him that type of money.
No.
But I would not give him a long term. I'd give him all the money up front that we can, front load it. Here's the incentives deal. Here's the signing bonus. We'll give you upwards of what's the max? $45 million a year or something like that to some degree, but $50 million. You know, I would give him front load it and say, this is what we're going to give you in the incentives, signing bonus, all that. But I would not give him a long-term contract because we saw what Joe Flacco did on a long-term contract.
Oh, brother, please.
Who sent us to the Super Bowl and never produced after, right?
Right.
And we had to eat that moving forward. We could not get talent on either side of the field, defense or offense, because all that money was going to Joe. And so they know, the Ravens organization knows this. They know they were burnt by this just from their last quarterback. So they're not going to be willing to go in. And Lamar has to understand that. That's the problem. With an agent, they can help him, tell him this. Here's the dynamics. Here's the, what's going on. Lamar ain't trying to hear all that. And he don't get that. And so I take the money I can get right now. You can try to test the market all you want out there. Not a lot of teams are willing to give you that type of money long term. They'll front load it for you all day long. But the question is going to be, how much are you willing to commit to stay in Baltimore as opposed to how much money bank do you want right away?
Hey, look.
He has to ask himself.
Hey, bro, look, when we check back in, we will see. But let me just tell you, if Lamar, and I believe he's a smart brother, Baltimore would give him not just the bag, but give him everything he wants because it's a legacy building organization. You know what I'm saying? You got the great ones that have already came from the Baltimore Ravens. So for them, it's like, look, we may not give you $230 million, but if you produce, if you carry the city on your back as you've been doing, legacy. You ain't gonna have to worry about going nowhere else. You be Ray Lewis of the quarterbacks.
We got you.
We got you.
Rain, sneak, slow down.
We'll bring you in on decisions on receivers every draft. We'll bring you in on other decisions. We'll build you. We'll build your legacy. You will forever be, there will be Johnny Unitas and Lamar Jackson.
Pretty much.
But if you're thinking about dipping, that's going to be a different thing. And I think that's what they want from him. What's your long-term commitment? Because if we commit, or how we ain't playing this number game in Baltimore. We'll do moving around. We want long-term, baby. We want this relation long-term.
And look, Tyler Huntley is not Lamar Jackson, but he ain't a bad backup, right? So
no, he's not. And Tyler will stay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, get it together, Lamar. Go now.
I'm telling you, there's always one waiting in the wings, bro. Always one waiting in the wings. My man, Hassan, Mr. Politics, Giordano, always good to talk to you, brother. We will reconnect with you, God willing, next Thursday, and so much more to talk about. Thank you so much, bro, for checking in.
Always a pleasure, bro. Hey.
Absolutely. Hassan Giordano, DMV Daily Media Group founder and owner. All right, folks, we got to take a quick break. When we move forward, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Memphis. And how should we have the conversations about mass shooting now that we have this unfortunate killing of 4 people and 3 are injured from this 19-year-old young black man? Do you think that this is going to open up the discussion around mental health? Will this further the conversation around gun access, or what? We will have that conversation. So stay with us. And that and so much more is coming up in the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome to the second hour of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Wanted to have a couple of different conversations with you this afternoon. The first being around the shooting, the unfortunate shooting that happened in Memphis yesterday, folks. And our hearts and prayers go out to the families of the victims of that horrific shooting. This was a shooting that caused a lot of people to shelter in place. Bus systems were suspended, schools were closed, and people were told to not leave their homes. Many restaurants, especially in the public places, were shut down as the manhunt was happening for the 19-year-old Black shooter Ezekiel DeJuan Kelly. 19 years old, folks. A shooter who went on a rampage, killing 4, injuring 3, all while live streaming the whole event. Now, this was a day-long search, and it took people by great surprise, and trying to figure out the motive. According to law enforcement officials in Memphis, they are still trying to determine what the motive may have been. The word coming out of City Hall there in Memphis, Mayor Jim Strickland, he expressed outrage that Ezekiel Kelly had been charged with criminal attempted first-degree murder 2 years ago, but pleaded guilty in April of 2021 to the lesser charge of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but only served 11 months and was released in March. So this opens up the door about sentencing. There's a couple of things I wanted to have this conversation with you about, folks, and I want you as my culture crew to join me in this and share your thoughts as we talk about this. But one is, does this change the conversation about mass shooters? Now, we often have seen, based on history, and this is not just some broad generalization, but just based on history, mass shooters are generally not young Black males. But this is one of those cases where it doesn't simply fit into that category. So you have a 19-year-old young Black man who decides to go on a killing spree. Motive is still unknown. He went to prison before, and there he is, folks, Ezekiel DeJuan Kelly. He went to prison before for another killing, but he didn't serve the full time. What do we make of this as a community, as a people? How should we have the conversation about this? And is there concern that we might start seeing now more young Black men who may lash out in this very violent way? I want you to post your comments on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, and let me know what your thoughts are around this situation of Ezekiel DeJuan Kelly, especially if you're in the Memphis area. You know, you can share your thoughts and you know, tell us what's been happening there on the scene. I wanted to get your thoughts. And looking at this, the first thing that came to my mind, folks, is that one, that there's always been two reasons for the gun or mass shooting conversation. One is that it's an access to guns. The second one is mental health. We've had this discussion before. But I really am wondering if any of those things will apply. How will this story be told about Ezekiel DeJuan Kelly? Now, we are still getting, and I'm pulling up some information about the story, but we're still trying to figure out, and I think folks are trying to see, like, what happened in Ezekiel that forced him to go into a space like this. What happened? Folks, join me in the discussion. Janelle, you checked in. Good to hear from you, Janelle. You said 11 months only. What type of screening is done before parole? Right. Right. He killed somebody. First-degree murder. First-degree murder. The mayor said, I'm angry for the victims. I'm angry that our citizens had the shelter in place for their own safety until the suspect was caught. This is no way for us to live, and this is not acceptable. So yeah, 11 months. He's done this before. And I wonder, you know, Janelle, I wonder, and I'm sure this probably crossed your mind, if those advocates of making sure that Black men stay out of prison and that we don't criminalize Black men, which I totally understand, but what do you say in a case like this? That's why I think that when we have those conversations about sentencing, we should say it should be a case-by-case basis instead of making a broad generalization saying, look, we you know, in order to keep Black men from going into prison, this should be the stand, this should be the policy. It should be a case-by-case basis to me. Because in some cases, Black men do wrong. And if they're out, and I'm talking about some of these brothers, if they're out, they may do even more wrong. Y'all could debate me. So Janelle, thank you so much for checking in. Lana, thank you again for checking in. You said, let me tell you what I don't like about this. He will be the face of Mississippi of mass shootings when we know it's a crime mainly done by white people, by young people, young white youth. I don't know if he's going to be a crime on that, Lana. I don't think he's, a face of that. I don't know that. I don't know that. I mean, again, we're still not seeing a huge number of people a huge number of cases, rather, where Black men are the perpetuators like this. I'm not sure if he's going to be the face of it just yet. But I think that's why we need to have at least having this conversation to determine, like, okay, how do we make sure this doesn't become a trend? Now, in this day and time, mass shooting as a phenomenon is being scrutinized and looked at more closely because of what we've seen from other mass shooters, from the Top supermarket to other mass shootings, right? But I always brought this in, and I always keep this in the back of my mind, that in Black communities, when you have a drive-by shooting, when you have a shooting in a park, when you have a shooting of a home, and it's done by Black folks against other Black folks, that could still be considered a mass shooting. If you got 2, 3, 4 victims of a shooting situation, that's a mass shooting. But it's not deemed that way. It's not categorized that way when it happens in our community. And I think, here's my take on this, Lana. If we started to say that a person who has taken the life of 2, 3, 4 people, and I think the federal standard of a mass shooting, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, is that there's 4 more people that have been shot and killed. If we have that same terminology in our community, maybe, just maybe, that can help to stop the violence and the threat and the trend of violence in our community, because now we're not just looking at it as a shooting, we're looking at it as a mass shooting, and it takes a lot more weight. It resonates differently. It hits different. Maybe. Because guess what? Language is just as important in this talk of social ills just as much as policy. And policy is easy for us to skirt around or to use certain language. But if you're talking about social justice, there has to be accurate language to engage and to activate the people to act. All right, let's go back to your thoughts, folks. And I appreciate all of you for checking in. Tiana, you said this wouldn't have never happened if he was still in jail serving out his time. Facts. So the system failed. The system failed. So we got to look at that, right? We got to look at the fact that he was able to essentially plea out and do 11 months on a first-degree murder charge. So I'm wondering, Tiana, and this is, I mean, you can certainly respond, sis. I'm wondering that do we need to have a conversation about more severe penalties? Do we need to have a conversation about that, especially when it comes to first-degree murder? I think so, even though it might affect Black men. And this is why it's so hard to have a conversation like this, because now we know that this is a young Black man shooting and killing other folks. Now, I don't know the races of the victims of this shooting. I don't know that. So if anybody has come across some credible information to say that, I haven't been able to find anything. But if you found some credible information, I would love to hear it. But it will be interesting. It will certainly be interesting. Tiana, great point. Thank you for checking in. Jawan, good to hear from you, sis. You said the system failed here. This kid is clearly disturbed and shouldn't have been released after the first killing. Absolutely, I agree. So then that brings us into the space of mental health, right? Like we got to have a conversation about mental health. And that's why I say, well, we need to know more about his background to see what was going on, what made him just click. Mike V, my guy, you checked back in. You said the issue is at the policy level. Keep in mind, Tennessee is an open carry, no permit necessary gun sanctuary state. Wow. A Black man can get a gun quicker than he can get a job. Damn. Wow. A Black man can get a gun quicker than he get a job. Whew. Hey, Mike, you might have had the statement of the day with that one, bro, because that speaks volumes about where we are in this country. And guess what, Mike? It's hard for me to disagree. It's hard for me to disagree. Great point. Davey, thank you for checking in. My guy, you said the gun lobby won't bend to this, I'm certain, right? No. I'm not laughing at the seriousness. I'm just laughing at the irony. The fact is the gun lobby won't bend. No, they're not going to stand up and say we need more guns, especially if the victims are predominantly white. They're not. E. Garza, thank you for checking in. You said election deniers depress me. Geraldo Rivera wrote, I blame President Trump for a shameful campaign to slander and undermine American faith in our election. I can never support him again. Okay. All right, that's interesting. That's interesting to bring into this conversation. I appreciate you there, E. Garza. Constance White, you checked in and said, well, today our kids had to go to schools with high police presence because there were kids saying they wanted to follow his lead as a Memphis native, and I'm tired of the violence in my city. Constance, and I'm assuming it sounds like you're from Memphis or you live in Memphis. Yeah. But it's, you know what, to add to that, Constance, it's not, I don't think it's just even about the high profile, high police presence in the schools. I think there's also, I mean, we could talk about media, we could talk about the violent culture. We've talked about this. Folks, violence is a part of the American culture in every aspect. Violent speech, violent behavior, I mean, everything, and especially in the Black community, if somebody don't like you, smack them. I mean, violence is so ingrained in us that we may not even look at how deeply ingrained it is, right? That when you decide to even take a peaceful stance, people scrutinize and make you feel like you're weak. Just simply by saying, no, I'm not going to take this into, not going to kick it up a notch to get violent. People will make you feel bad. From the time you are a child to a grown adult, if you don't respond in violence, if somebody violates you, if they hurt you, you're seen as weak. And that's a cultural point, I think, Constance, that we all got to have to deal with, right? Like, if we really are serious about stopping the violence, it's not just about not having access to guns. So, I mean, we know that. But what about the violent speech? What about the attitude that we have around violence and how we treat one another, how a child handles how we handle conflict with one another? I mean, it runs deep. It runs very deep. So, Constance, that's a great point. Latoya, you checked in. Good to hear from you, Latoya. I'm glad to hear from some new voices as well. You said, Memphis is my hometown. We've always had problems with gun violence, but we've never had someone just indiscriminately going around and shooting random people before. This is on a whole new level. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. If we start to see a trend, Latoya, of Black men becoming mass shooters, oh my God, could y'all could you imagine that happening? Could you imagine that? I really couldn't. That would put all Black men in a state of crisis. You know what I mean? And I can only imagine while they were doing this manhunt, and we don't know this because I don't live in Memphis, right? But if they were looking for this man in a certain neighborhood, I know that there was a shooting in Baltimore. It's a couple of years ago in West Baltimore. They locked down the whole West Baltimore neighborhood to look for this guy. SWAT, regular patrol officers, locked down, residents couldn't leave the neighborhood, none of that. And if you were a Black man at that time walking around, you got profiled. So that's how far things can go. I can only imagine. So again, our hearts and prayers go out to the families and the victims of the victims. Man, oh man. Let's go to Brianna Bluford. Brianna, you checked in and said they did to us what if I said they made me do it because of the impression that they caused because of the racist talk and other races. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't know the victim's race. It would be interesting. And then I'm not saying it makes a difference at all. I'm just making a point as to what was the motive, trying to get an understanding. Is it a racially motivated situation? Was it a random situation? Like, what was your motive? Gregory Harris, you said the system fails us all. And this young man, and I use that term loosely, deserves to be locked away for the entirety of his life. But the system also failed him. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what we should expect from the system. In this case, let me just add that. In this case, what should we expect from the system, right? How should we handle the conversation about it? Should we be, what's the best word to describe this, folks? Because something like this is easy for us to say, don't blame Black men. You know, like, Black men need to, like, we don't need any more Black men in prison, along that sentiment. I think many of you understand what I'm trying to say. So should we take that stance? Or should we be like, you know what, he's wrong, throw the book at him. He took life, throw the book at him. He killed indiscriminately, throw the book at him. Like, how should we be? How should we handle this? Should we defend him? Should we defend him? Because I've seen that also. That a man or woman, a Black man, a Black woman, they go out, they violate the law, they take life, but we still defend them because we say, oh, well, they had a mental health issue. Oh, well, this happened to them when they were a child. Should we defend them? It's hard. It's hard. I don't want to see Black people in prison, but I don't want to keep seeing Black people crying either. Because of other Black people, you know what I'm saying? I don't want us to put so much emphasis on trying to keep the integrity of the perpetrator intact, but we lose sight of the real pain of the victim. I hope that makes sense to a lot of you, right? Like, yeah, the perpetrator had issues, but look how they handled their issue. And as a result of their mishandling of the conflict and issues in their life, they took somebody else's life who didn't deserve to die the way they died. So we put more compassion on the perpetrator and give no thought to the victims. And I don't like that. I don't think that's fair, because if it was any one of us, and God forbid that we find ourselves or a family member in that, I know many of one of us, we wouldn't give a damn that somebody who pulled the trigger had a problem. They had, oh my gosh, they had a hard childhood. They didn't grow up with a father in the house, or their mother was on drugs or something. Like, okay, we all have our challenges growing up. We didn't all grow up in the perfect homes, but at the end of the day, you took a human life. You felt like it was justified to take somebody's life who had nothing to do with it. And that's where I personally get upset. Because when I hear those stories, I'm like, okay, but what about the life? So you think you still living? You could still, quote unquote, get some help. The person's life who you took, who didn't deserve to die the way they died from you, their life is over. That testimony has been put to an end. They can't get no more help from you. Hotep, Pan-Africa, you checked in. Good to hear from you. You say peace and blessings, African families. Semantics will not change the perception of acts perpetrated in Black communities versus those in white communities. We are considered expendable, right? The semantics for me, Hotep, was that maybe we need a change in semantics because of the culture that we're in. Maybe if Black folks start saying, man, so-and-so committed another mass shooting, it would resonate for us to stop the violence. That's what I'm putting out there. Maybe if we've said that the street organizations that do damage and harm and taking Black boys and Black girls because of turf wars and gang wars, and call them, if we were to call them domestic terrorists, would that change the conversation? Would that change the culture of Black people? That's what I'm asking. If we change the language, if we just call it a gang shooting, many of us probably just zone out, say, oh, it's a gang shooting. That's fine. But if we say, man, you heard about them domestic terrorists? You hear about those community terrorists? All I'm saying is, will semantics play to our benefit to help us to see and not become so quiet when life is taken in our community? Truth is power. You checked in, my guy. You said we don't put a value on life anymore because of video games, because of the things that we see on TV. They gratify violence, and this young man doesn't take it serious. It's sad, and it's sad. Yeah, it's sad. But again, I'm going back to my original question, truth is power. How should we handle that? We know all the factors, but when a young Black man decides to take the life of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, grandma, auntie, uncle, when he decides to do that, do we blame the video games or do we blame him? Because that's the other part for me. Our community and our culture will never get better until we start to put somebody accountable. I'm tired, and y'all, tell me if I'm there. And we're going to take a quick pause from this for a moment. Woo! But let me tell y'all something. How many of you are tired of putting our shortcomings on something outside of us? I mean, seriously. As if, as grown adults, grown-ass men and women, we don't know the difference between right and wrong. I'm tired. I get it. The system. I get it. The slavery. I get that. And I get it. Woo, I get it. But this is 2022. You don't go around shooting and killing people, man. Especially if they are no threat to your livelihood. I don't want to keep hearing that stuff about the system, man. The system has made us. No. Because again, if it happened to us, and ours, either to us personally or within a family member of ours, you would want justice. And what you gonna say? Oh man, the system. No, you would be like, man, their ass needs to go to court, and the court needs to throw the book at them. I mean, we can't run away from this point, folks. I really hope that we don't. We cannot run away from holding our own people accountable for the wrong that they committed against their own community. We can't run away from that. We got to hold others accountable. Otherwise, we're saying to other people outside of the community, it's okay to kill Black people, right? Because guess what? There's not going to be no repercussion. Look, I got to take a quick break. When we come forward, let me take more of your thoughts on this situation and so much more. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Just having a one-on-one with you. So many of you are checking in, some in the new voices. I love to hear new voices, but we've been talking about this situation in Memphis, man. This is a young Black man, 19 years old, Ezekiel DeJuan Kelly, who has gone on a killing spree, a rampage. And I'm simply asking the question, folks, how should we handle this? How should we handle the conversation about this? Now, in the media, this is what has come. This is something that I'm seeing. The media is going to be very sensitive because of everything that's been going on within the Black community. And I'm talking about most of your liberal media. The media like CNN, the media like MSNBC, USA Today. Certain media is going to be very like tiptoeing. They're not going to, they might say a Black man, but they might say 19-year-old man, right? So some of the media is going to be very cognizant about how to present this story or how to talk about the perpetrator, Ezekiel DeJuan Kelly, because they know in this very, very period of time, the hypersensitivity of talking about race in a context like this, right? Especially when Black folks, we have been under oppression of violence for many, many years in this country, whether it's talking about political violence, police violence, or self-induced violence, right? So the media, some of the media, I think is going to be very kind of like tiptoeing around the fact that this was a black man who is a mass shooter. He's captured by police. But I don't want us on this network among each other to tiptoe around how we need to have this conversation. I'm going to go back to, y'all remember the DC sniper when you found out that they were black? Y'all remember that? If you lived in the DMV at that time and you found out that this was a older black man and a younger black boy committing these acts of violence against black and white people, you resign. Once you found out, you probably had the same reaction that I did when I found out, and I had to keep it real, folks. I was like, oh shit. The man had his last name Muhammad. Then they try to make the connection to him being a part of the Nation of Islam. I mean, he was inspired, but that teaching is not, we don't teach that, right? So, I mean, they try to make all these correlations. Oh, he's with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and all that. So they try to make a big thing out of that. My point in bringing that up is that we didn't really provide a level of pushback. You know what I'm saying? And for us, even today, and that was years ago, folks, even today, when we see black people who commit violence in the same manner that we normally see white people, we don't know how to handle it. We don't know. We don't have a conversation with each other to say, hey, yo, okay, this is new. This is different. One of our watchers here, she said she's from Memphis. She said, this is on a whole new level. A whole new level. But when you have this type of violence, and see, violence doesn't care about your skin color. It don't care about your socioeconomic background, right? Violence comes when it comes. It happens because there's something in the heart and in the mind and in the spirit that's not right, that's not at ease, that's not balanced. And I think that for many of us, when we read or hear stories like this of like Ezekiel Dewan Kelly, it's a reminder that we're not good. And as a result of that, we're going to have to face ourselves. Because we can go hard when it's talking about white people, right? When we talk about white police officers, even in that case, right? When we talk about white police officers, man, they racist. But what about the black police officers that whip our asses in the name of the law? We get in a different level of feedback. The conversation changes a little bit. We don't have to keep being there, folks. That's my point. Let's deal with the big elephant in the room. We have been raised on violence. You're talking about access to guns. You know how many guns black folks have shot in this country? Now, we know that somebody gave us the gun. We understand that. But when they talk about gun laws in this country, they're not talking about Raekwon, Lil D. They ain't talking about them. They talking about others, people outside of us, right? They talking about other people. They're not talking about our people. Because, and y'all know, and some of you know this, y'all know that if they were talking about us, if we were really a part of the gun ownership conversation, come on, people. Come on. Can you imagine that? We are part of the gun ownership conversation, gun rights conversation. Black people need to have gun rights. And we talked a little bit about this before, but that will change the whole dynamic. Man, that's not, no. Y'all don't need to have no ownership. Y'all don't need to have no rights. Y'all don't need to have no access to no guns. But that's something that we have to discuss. But the perception here of this young black man who goes around and killing people, we got to deal with this. We got to recognize that, guess what? There's some black men in our community that needs to be locked up and put away. They are a pariah to the community. I'm not going to stand, man, look, we ain't sugarcoating this today, folks. We can't sugarcoat it at all. Some of us need to go away. Some of us. And they're in your family and they're in my family. Some of them, come on, folks. I know people. And I know each one of us, and this is the pain that we all carry. This is the pain that we all carry, right? So you can be honest with me. But each one of us probably got at least one person in the family that you know that should be in prison. Because they have done something or they got tendencies, criminal tendencies. You know somebody. Right in your own family. I know somebody too. This is the hardest part of the conversation. So if they got criminal tendencies, then we gotta be like, yo. And look, I'm getting beyond the point. I think I'm already there. I ain't trying to save one at the expense of the many. You know what I'm saying? If you going to prison, even though you might be my homeboy, even though you're part of the community, even though you going to prison is going to save a number of lives, goodbye, sir. Pack up, because your ass is going. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to keep covering for black people who want to violate and then they want to come to us for shelter. When you're wrong, you're the perpetrator, you're the threat, you're the dangerous one. But when that hammer of the American justice system start to fall down on your black ass, then we looking for support. No, don't put no, and don't let nobody put the okey doke on us, man. Seriously. Seriously, the community we suffering so much nowadays, man. Last thing we need to be doing is harboring fugitives. I know some of you probably upset at me. I'm like, man, for real, you think that? Yeah, damn right. Damn right, man. We got children. We got babies. We got seniors. Nobody wants to be living in fear for the rest of their life. Now, do we serve them up on a silver platter? No, man. I mean, look, come on, black folks. We've been innovative and creative before. I'm going to just put it that way. Y'all remember, now some of you are older than me, so y'all remember there in some of your major cities, and I could probably name a few of them, places like Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Baltimore, St. Louis, right? Go down to the southern parts. When there was a problem member of the community, right? There was a group of us that handled that problem with the blessings from the community. Yeah, let's keep it real. And we handled that problem because guess what? We didn't think about the individual, we thought about the collective. And it might be time, and I'm just throwing this out there, family, real talk. I'm just throwing this out there, real talk, man. It might be time for us to reinstitute that level of community policing. We're gonna call it that. To Mike and to Damon and to all of my brothers, y'all understand, right? We might have to implement that community policing again. Because guess what? Your freedom, your way of life, if you come into the neighborhood, if you grow up in our neighborhood, if you grow up in our community, and you become a destructive force of the community, we're not going to save you. We're not going to allow you to just continue to be a problem for us at the expense of the children, the elderly, at the expense of other grown men and women who want to have a safe and decent place to live.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
I believe that people our age have lost the ability to focus the discipline on the art of organizing.
The challenges, there's so many of them and they're complex, and we need to be moving to address them. But I'm able to say, watch out, Tiffany. I know this road.
That is so freaking dope.
All right, folks, I appreciate y'all for checking back in. I apologize for a little technical difficulties there. But as we wrap up this part of the conversation, I wanted to be very, very clear about where we stand on this situation. This conversation about what do we do, how do we handle this is going to just be an ongoing. I feel like, it can start here or it can continue here. And we may not get to all the answers, but my whole point is to bring up to you some of the dynamics that are in play, the many different factors that are in play as a result of what we have experienced here in this country and in our communities. And culturally, we have to break away from some of the cultural norms that will keep us from seeing the truth about a situation. And that's what I'm looking at here with this whole case of Ezekiel DeWarren Kelly. I mean, this is a 19-year-old. I can't go back to it enough, folks. 19 years old and committing this type of pain with no motive. And as a result of that, we suffer as a community. Now, you might say, well, white men do it all the time, and that, Farajii, that's not fair. I know it is not fair, but the double standard is there, and we can't run away from that, folks. We can't run away from the double standard. Yes, white men, young white men can commit acts of heinous acts and crimes. They can kill. But yes, when we kill, it's a different thing. It's a story. And I'm in a place of trying to figure out the crossroads, like which path to take. But my first allegiance in a moment like this is not with the perpetrator. My first allegiance is with the victims of the families of the victims. And if we find that there is a number of Black victims, especially, that have been affected by this killing, then we need to figure out what's next. We can't allow that to go unaddressed. And we certainly can't stand up for the perpetrator and not think about the livelihood of the victims. So it's just a couple of things that we put out there, and I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me in this conversation. But it's something that I hope and pray that we all think about. And I really hope and pray that we don't see more of these circumstances, more Black mass shooters. And we probably, if we got to start using that terminology, it's going to blow me away, folks. I'm serious. It's going to just a Black mass shooter. Wow. So, let us think about these things. Let us figure out what's the best course of action, but more importantly, let us start to see if we can change the culture when it comes to violence in our community, having these conversations, changing the culture about our perception, changing the culture around how we see victims and perpetrators. So much got to be addressed here, folks. So much. So I thank each and every one of you. Again, we apologize for the technical the technical interruption there. But I would love for you to continue the conversation. You can follow me on all of my social media platforms at The Real Farajii on Instagram, Farajii on Twitter, and Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. And let's continue to have the conversation. I know everybody's going to be talking about the Memphis shooting, but I hope and pray that what was said today, what we shared today, it gets you to think deeper about us, deeper about our culture. Because it's time that we need to shift some things. And like I mentioned before the technical interruption, just like I said, there was a time where we had a way in handling certain members of the community that didn't understand the rules and the norms of the community, that didn't have a value for life. We had to deal with that. And let's keep it real. We dealt with that. We dealt with it. If you want to talk about community policing, that starts with the community saying enough is enough, and then we using our intelligence and our resources from each other to come up with a way to stop the crime. We got to get past our fear first, though. We got to get past this stance that, black men need to be coddled. Black men who perpetrate crimes, who violate the law, know exactly what they're doing. Black women do too. So let's not act like they're babies. I didn't know. You knew exactly what you did, what you were going to do, how you were going to do it, and you knew exactly what would happen if you got caught doing it. So you knew what was going to happen. So since you know, then we're going to create a new standard by which you come into the community or how you interact with the community. Don't go to mama. Don't go to auntie. Don't go to grandma now. Because you knew exactly the difference, what you were about to do. You knew right from wrong. So many levels. So many layers to this, folks. I'm telling you. There's so many layers. But let's see how this story continues to unfold. I'm interested to learning more about the motives behind these killings and his thinking. I'm interested to see if folks are going to start talking about mental health in the same way they talk about it with these past mass shootings. I'm interested to see how this thing unfolds, folks. I'm really, really interested. All right, folks, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank Hassan G. O'Donnell, Mr. Politics, for stepping in on Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to have another set of great conversations. So, folks, make sure y'all continue to support us here at the Black Star Network. You can find us at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, and we will do the great work of giving you quality programming, having the conversations that are most important to you, and we're going to do it in a way that's relevant and keeping it right in tune with the culture. So make sure you support us at blackstarnetwork.com. Stay tuned. Up next at the 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is Brother Roland Martin with Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.